Stop aiming for perfection. Mediocre, average is good enough, don't you think? I mean, I know I'm nothing special. I'm an average Joe, as they say, and I'm happy with that. Even if I'm only slightly above average in some things, I think that puts me in the top 10%. I can't really ask for more, and I really hate it when I get compared to someone else who is way more good looking, successful, or richer than me. For lots of people, this is a cause of anxiety and something I recognize in myself when I was younger. Let me tell you a true story about that, actually. Something personal about me when I was just starting out. There was a guy, still remember his name, Quentin Cullen. Now, I had no ill will or bad feelings towards Quentin, but he was better than me. And my boss kept comparing us. I don't know what Quentin is doing now. It has been maybe 30 years, but he was more successful than me back then, and he probably still is. So the issue I had was basically that I am not Quentin Cullen, and constantly being compared to someone better than you, it kills your soul eventually. And it wasn't just a case of if I copied what Quentin did, I would be as good or maybe even better than he was. That never works. Copying others rarely brings you the same results because the truth is you can't really understand what they're doing, how they're doing it, or why they're doing it. Plus, copying someone successful doesn't actually mean that is the best way to achieve something, does it? It worked for them, but it might not work for you. That's just how life goes sometimes. So as individuals, we should strive to be different, not just carbon copies or clones of our perfect, idealized self. Let's get onto the book that we're talking about. Rather than me ranting, let me talk about the book. Think Faster and Talk Smarter. You wouldn't think anything I've said so far has anything to do with this book, but actually everything I have said so far has everything to do with this book. One of the main ideas in this book is that just doing something is better than not doing anything. Even if you just do something average or averagely, that has already put you one step ahead of almost everyone else. But I think it's the fear that stops us in the first place. Now, according to Matt Abrahams, who wrote the book, your fear or anxiety should not define you. You are not the same as your feelings. You should be able to observe your feelings without becoming attached to them. Now, this brings me to the song Sound of Silence. My favorite version is by the band Disturbed, but if I'm not wrong, it was a Simon and Garfunkel original hit. So you should be able to observe your feelings without becoming attached to them. Now, when I read that in the book, my spine tingled a little bit. And especially when I made this connection, all I could think about was the opening lyrics to the song by Simon and Garfunkel. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Now, that's a great song. And to be honest with you, in the past, I've been there in the dark, and I know it has defined me in the past. But now I can see that darkness objectively and deal with it better. That might come with age and experience. I don't know. Anyway, this is all very interesting, but what does it have to do with thinking faster and talking smarter? That is a good question. Now, a good portion of this book talks about how just speaking up, even when you feel so anxious about it, is better than doing nothing. It's about not letting your anxiety define you. It's about not comparing yourself to others, especially perfect celebrities, especially those perfect celebrities who make impromptu speeches. They only rehearse for 5 hours beforehand, but you think it was impromptu. If you think someone who gave a TED talk and really nailed it, if you think they didn't rehearse like hell for weeks beforehand, then I have some news for you. So the message I want to give you is mediocre, average is good enough for average people like you, us average folk. Okay. Another quote from this book is, don't be creative, be obvious. Now, I do not have a creative bone in my body, so I focus on a simple, clear message instead. Perfection is a myth. If it exists at all, perfection is a myth. Something else that I remember from a long time ago, when I was very young, I worked in a sales job, and in sales you have targets and you're given a target, but your boss or people around you will tell you, well, don't aim for the target. You have to aim above the target. And the analogy that they sort of gave me was the bow and arrow. If you're firing a bow and arrow, you don't aim at the object. You aim above the object because your arrow flies in an arc. So to achieve anything, including perfection, you have to aim higher than perfection, because you're never going to achieve what you're aiming at. There's always going to be an arc where you come down. So if you're aiming straight, your arrow or your aim is never going to follow in a straight line. It's always going to arc downwards. Okay. So that's just a little analogy about perfection. You can never hit or reach perfection. If you're aiming for perfection, you'll always fall short of perfection. If you're aiming way above perfection, your arrow is always going to arc and come down lower than expected. Now, we haven't even gotten to the main part of the book yet. The secret sauce. The secret sauce in this book is frameworks. Now, frameworks are not new to me. As an English teacher, I've worked with many students preparing them for English language exams, and I've always taught frameworks. I've always taught frameworks in any time I work with people who need help with communication. I've always worked with frameworks, always taught frameworks. So I was really happy and really delighted by this book, which highlights the importance of using frameworks in communication, especially to help us average people communicate better. There's actually lots in this book that I relate to through my work teaching English and helping people with communication. I won't go into all of them now, but just to highlight a few things: signposting, using the yes and function, questioning tactics, storytelling, and of course, frameworks. A good framework helps you communicate without having to think about what comes next. You will know and probably use frameworks already. You might not recognize them or be aware of it, but I bet you do use frameworks in your communication. If you have been to a job interview recently and you've done some prep beforehand, you will probably be familiar with the STAR framework, STAR, situation, task, action, result. It's a well-known framework that recruiters like to use to get information from you. But others that I like are PREP, P-R-E-P, or one of my favorites, tell. So, okay, something that comes to my mind right now, not from the book Think Faster, Talk Smarter, but another thing I have taught to many people over the years in terms of communication is the importance of setting expectations when you communicate. So many people fail to set expectations. So your listeners, the people you're communicating with, have nothing to go on. They don't know what to expect from you. And then they just feel deflated because perhaps they've set their personal expectations right the way up here, but your expectation or your level was down here. If you never let them know this is your level, they don't know what to expect. They're expecting this, but you give them this. So they go away feeling deflated or not very happy with the communication. So tell people what you are going to communicate about. Tell them why you're going to communicate and for how long. And then tell them what you expect them to do with that information afterwards as well. Let's go back to framework. So tell. Tell, one of the best frameworks you can use. It's simple. It's not actually discussed in this book, but tell is a really simple framework which you can use to tell people what you're going to talk about. You can give them the information and then you can tell them what you've just told them. Okay. So that's basically what tell is. Tell is a framework where you tell people what you're going to talk about, how long, and what the subject matter is. Yeah. It's kind of like your introduction. I'm going to talk about this subject. This is going to be the focus, and I'm going to talk for 5 minutes. Tell people what you're going to do. Then the second part of tell is you just tell them. Then the third part is you tell them what you've just told them. You give them a conclusion. Tell. It's nice and simple, and it works in almost every situation. So the next time you find yourself having to communicate and give somebody some information, just use the tell 3 method. Tell. I call it tell 3. I love it. Okay. Another lesson from the book, Think Faster, Talk Smart, is to focus on your audience. Now, you're probably aware that maybe stand-up comedians are experts at listening to their audiences, focusing on their audience. They are experts at understanding their audiences. Now, I'm not suggesting that you suddenly take a career change into stand-up comedy. Unless that's your passion, then go for it. What I'm suggesting is that you spend a little time learning to listen to your audience. Okay, now you're not listening to what they are saying. You're listening for clues to whether they are bored or excited. You want to know, how are they feeling? You also want to know, what are they doing? Are they listening? Are they on their phones? What can you see? You can become an expert on understanding your audience. And it doesn't take a Harvard degree. You just have to pay attention and then give the audience what they want. A framework like tell will allow you to do this. Now, the key, obviously, is preparation and practice, which I imagine you've already guessed. If your communication is in a rut, stop doing the same things and do something different. Key takeaways from this book. Number 1, stop trying to be perfect. Number 2, frameworks help for every part of your life. And number 3, practice. I think frameworks are so important. I'm going to do another video just on frameworks for you. So see you next week.